The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft whisper. Ambassador Tae-min walked slowly into the great hall, his crystal-like body catching the light from 1,000 stars visible through the transparent dome above. His hands shook as he carried the data pad that would change everything. The council members sat in their floating chairs around the circular room. Each representative came from a different world, a different species. Some looked like tall trees, with golden leaves. Others had blue skin and 6 arms. A few glowed with their own inner light. All of them were afraid. Tae-min stopped in the center of the room. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Honored council members, I bring terrible news from the Outer Rim territories." The chamber fell silent. Even the soft humming of the life support systems seemed to quiet down. "The Kronak Empire has destroyed the Thessian system," Tae-min continued. 17 billion souls, gone in 3 days. They used planet crackers to split the worlds apart. Nothing remains but asteroid fields and death. A gasp echoed through the chamber. The representative from Altair Prime, a being that looked like a walking flower, spoke first. "How many systems have they taken now?" 17, Tae-min replied. "In just 6 months. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. They have weapons we do not understand and shields that turn away our most powerful attacks." The council leader, an ancient being called the first speaker, leaned forward. His voice was like wind through old trees. "What do our military experts say?" "They say we have perhaps 2 months before the Kronak reach the core worlds," Tae-min said. "Our defense fleets are being destroyed faster than we can build them. The Kronak fight like machines. They show no mercy. They take no prisoners." Silence filled the room again. The weight of those words pressed down on everyone present. "There is one option," Tae-min said quietly. "One species we have not yet asked for help." The first speaker's eyes widened. "You cannot mean the humans," Tae-min finished. "The Deathworlders." A shudder ran through the council. For years, they had watched the human species with a mixture of fear and disgust. Humans came from a world so dangerous that most galactic species considered it uninhabitable. Earth had predators that hunted in packs, weather that could kill with wind and water, and gravity so strong it crushed the bones of weaker beings. The humans themselves were even worse. They fought wars over resources, ideas, and pride. They built weapons that could destroy planets. They practiced something called martial arts, just for fun. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to enjoy fighting. When humans first joined the galactic community 50 years ago, the Council had imposed strict limits on their military. No more than 100 warships, no weapons above a certain power level, no expansion beyond their home system without permission. The humans had agreed with strange smiles on their faces. "They are barbarians," said the representative from Centauri Beta. "Violent savages who solve problems with explosions." "They are dangerous," added another council member. "Their military leaders study something called total war. They have books about destroying entire civilizations." The first speaker raised a hand for silence. "Yes, the humans are frightening. But perhaps that is what we need now. The Kronak have never faced an opponent like them." Tae-min nodded. "I have prepared a formal request for military assistance. But I warn you all, if we ask the humans for help, we may find that the cure is worse than the disease." Light years away, in the Sol system, Fleet Admiral J. Ho Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. The massive ship hung in space above Earth like a steel mountain. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the blue and green world that had given birth to humanity. The communication officer turned to face him. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." Kim nodded. "Put it on the main screen." Taemin's image appeared, larger than life. The alien ambassador looked tired and desperate. Behind him, the council chamber buzzed with nervous activity. "Admiral Kim," Taemin began, "I speak for the Galactic Council in this dark hour. We request immediate military assistance against the Kronak Empire. They have destroyed 17 star systems and show no signs of stopping. Our fleets cannot match their power." Kim listened without expression. Next to him, Captain Yunbi Park studied data that scrolled across her personal tablet. Her dark eyes were cold as space as she read about the Kronak attacks. "We know the Council has placed restrictions on human military activity," Taemin continued. "We are prepared to lift all such restrictions immediately. We need your help." The transmission ended. Kim turned to his tactical advisor. "What do you think, Captain Park?" Yunbi looked up from her tablet. "The Kronak use standard galactic battle doctrines, long-range energy weapons, coordinated fleet movements, very organized, very predictable. And they have never fought humans before," she said with a thin smile. "They have no idea what they would be facing." Kim walked to the window and looked down at Earth. In the distance, he could see the lights of the orbital shipyards where new warships were always under construction. The human military had been quiet for decades, but it had never stopped growing. "Send a message to the Council," Kim said. "Tell them we accept their request. Also send word to all fleet commanders. Authorization Lima 77 is now in effect." Captain Park's eyes widened slightly. "Authorization." Lima 77 was the activation code for full military mobilization. It had not been used since the last major war between human nations, over 60 years ago. "Sir," she said carefully, "are you sure about this?" Kim turned back to face her. "Captain, for 50 years the galactic community has treated us like dangerous children. They have limited our expansion, restricted our weapons, and watched us with fear and suspicion." He paused, looking at the star charts that showed Kronak movements. "Now they come begging for help from the barbarian Deathworlders. They want us to save their civilized galaxy with our uncivilized methods." "And we will?" "Oh, yes," Kim said quietly. "We will show them exactly what humans are capable of when we stop holding back, but I suspect they will not like what they see." Across Earth, emergency signals began to flash in military installations. Generals and admirals received coded messages that brought them instantly to full alert. In underground bunkers, massive computers began calculating supply needs and battle plans. The human war machine was waking up. On Luna, General Mi Ray Cho read the mobilization order with satisfaction. Her Marines had been training for this day, even if they had not known what this day would bring. Now they would finally get to put their skills to use. "How long since the last real war?" asked her aide. "Too long," General Cho replied. "Far too long." She looked up at Earth, hanging in the black sky like a blue jewel. Somewhere out there, an enemy was destroying entire worlds and killing billions of innocent beings. The enemy thought they were unstoppable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The galaxy had asked for humanity's help. They would get it in full measure. But first, the Kronak Empire would discover what it meant to fight a species that had been born in violence and shaped by endless conflict. The Deathworlders were coming to war. The stealth ship, Silent Blade drifted through space like a ghost. Its hull was black as the void between stars, and special coating made it nearly invisible to sensors. Inside the cramped bridge, Intelligence Officer Dong-Woo Lee watched the screens that showed Kronak-occupied space ahead. "How close can we get?" he asked the pilot. "Close enough to see their breakfast," replied Commander Soo-Jin Han from the pilot's seat. "These Kronak ships are not looking for anything as small as us. They think they own this space." Dong-Woo nodded. For 3 weeks, they had been moving through captured systems, gathering information about the enemy. What they had found made his stomach turn. The first system they visited had been called Harmony. It was a peaceful world where artists and musicians lived in crystal cities that sang with the wind. Now it was nothing but broken glass and empty space. The Kronak had not just conquered it. They had erased it completely. "There," Soo-Jin pointed at the main screen. "Thessia Prime, or what is left of it." Dong-Woo looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. Thessia Prime had been home to 40 billion people. It had floating cities in the clouds and underwater, domes in the oceans. Great libraries held the wisdom of 1,000 years. Beautiful gardens covered entire continents. Now it was a tomb. The cities were gone. The oceans had been drained. Even the atmosphere had been stripped away. Giant machines crawled across the dead surface like metal spiders, tearing apart what remained and loading the pieces into huge ships. "They are taking everything," Dong-Woo whispered. "Every atom." "Look at this." Soo-Jin brought up another display. It showed the orbital stations around the dead planet. "Those are not just mining platforms. They are processing centers." Dong-Woo studied the images. The stations were massive, each one the size of a small moon. Ships came and went constantly, bringing materials up from the planet's surface. But other ships were leaving too, carrying away refined metals and complex compounds. "They are turning entire worlds into raw materials," he said. "This is not conquest. This is consumption." Soo-Jin activated the passive sensors, careful not to send out any signals that might reveal their position. "I am picking up movement in the next system. Lots of it." The screens filled with data. Hundreds of Kronak ships moved through space in perfect formation. Some were massive battleships bristling with weapons. Others were huge cargo vessels. But the most disturbing were the ships that looked like flying factories. Production vessels, Dong-Woo identified. "They are building new ships as they advance. They do not need supply lines from home." "How many ships do they have?" Soo-Jin asked. Dong-Woo ran the numbers through the computer. The answer made him feel sick. "At least 50,000 combat vessels, maybe twice that number of support ships. And the Council fleets? Maybe 10,000 ships total, spread across hundreds of systems." Soo-Jin was quiet for a long moment. "We are outnumbered 5-1, maybe 10-1. "It gets worse," Dong-Woo said. He pulled up tactical data from previous battles. "The Kronak ships have shields that absorb energy weapons. Council fleets use energy weapons almost exclusively. What about kinetic weapons? Missiles? Projectiles? Council species consider those primitive, uncivilized." Dong-Woo smiled grimly. "Lucky for us, humans never stopped being primitive." They spent 2 more days watching the Kronak operations. The enemy moved with mechanical precision. Every ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. There was no wasted motion, no confusion, no debate. "They fight like a single organism," Soo-Jin observed. "Perfect coordination." "But no creativity," Dong-Woo added. "Look at their patrol patterns. Same routes, Same timing, same responses to everything. You think that is a weakness? I think they have never fought anyone who did not play by the rules. The Silent Blade jumped to the next system on their route. This one had been captured only days before. The local species, called the Virani, had tried to surrender rather than fight. Their ships had powered down weapons and sent surrender signals. The Kronak had destroyed them anyway. No prisoners, Sujin said quietly as they watched the wreckage drift past. They do not want to rule. They want everything gone. Dongwu was recording everything, building a picture of Kronak's strategy and tactics. The enemy was powerful and ruthless, but patterns were emerging. Patterns that human military minds might be able to exploit. They have never lost a battle, he said. Not one. Every engagement has been a complete victory for them. That could be a problem, or it could be their greatest weakness, Dongwu replied. They have no experience with failure, no backup plans, no ability to adapt when things go wrong. Back on Earth, Strategic Analysis Director Kyung-ho Yoon read the intelligence reports with growing concern. His office in the Pentagon was filled with holographic displays showing Kronak movements and capabilities. They are not just an army, he told the assembled officers. They are a force of nature, like a storm or an earthquake. General Mirei, Cho leaned forward in her chair. Forces of nature can be survived. They can even be turned aside if you know how. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Kim. The Kronak expect their enemies to fight like civilized beings, General Cho explained. Stand-up battles between fleets, formal declarations of war, rules of engagement. And humans fight differently? Humans fight to win, she said simply. We use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and ignore every rule that gets in our way. Kyung-ho activated a new display. It showed human military history. Battle after battle where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through cunning, desperation, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The Kronak have superior numbers and technology, he said, but they have never faced guerrilla warfare. They have never dealt with enemies who refuse to surrender. They have never fought opponents who see battle as a puzzle to be solved rather than a ritual to be performed. Admiral Kim studied the displays. What are you recommending? We do not fight them the way they expect, Kyung-ho replied. We do not line up fleet against fleet and slug it out. We make them fight our kind of war. Which is? General Cho smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Total war. Complete war. The kind of war where the only rule is winning and the only sin is losing. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Washington. The city sprawled below, filled with millions of people going about their daily lives. Soon, many of those people would be in uniform, heading out to fight an enemy beyond their imagination. The Kronak think they know what war is, she said. They have conquered 17 systems and think they understand everything about combat. They are about to get an education. From us? From the species that invented the concept of acceptable losses, General Cho replied. From the people who built weapons specifically designed to crack planets. From the race that has been preparing for total war since we first picked up sticks and stones. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. The galaxy wanted the Deathworlders to save them. They are about to discover what that really means. Kyung-ho pulled up one final display. It showed Earth, surrounded by the orbital shipyards and defense platforms that had been under construction for decades. Soon, those facilities would be working around the clock, turning out warships designed for one purpose: to destroy the Kronak Empire completely. We will not just defeat them, he said quietly. We will make sure they never threaten anyone ever again. Outside, the first recruitment centers were opening their doors. Long lines of humans were already forming, eager to volunteer for military service. They did not yet understand what they would face among the stars. But they knew that their species was going to war, and they wanted to be part of it. The Deathworlders were preparing to teach the galaxy what total war really meant. The Sol system had become a fortress of steel and fire. Every orbital shipyard around Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt worked without stopping. Sparks flew from welding torches as new warships took shape on the construction frames. The sound of hammers and cutting tools echoed through the vacuum-sealed factories. Shipyard Coordinator In-Ho Park stood on the observation deck of Luna Construction Station 7. Through the reinforced windows, he could see 12 new destroyers being built simultaneously. Each ship was different from the elegant vessels preferred by other galactic species. These were built for war, not beauty. "How many ships can we complete this month?" asked his assistant, a young engineer named Haiwan. 47 major vessels, In-Ho replied, checking his tablet. Plus over 300 support craft, but that is not the important number. What is? In-Ho pointed to a massive construction bay where something truly enormous was taking shape. That is the important number. Battleship class, 60 million tons of armor, weapons, and human engineering. The ship was unlike anything in the galactic fleets. Where other species built sleek, curved vessels that looked like works of art, this was a flying fortress. Thick armor plates covered every surface. Weapon turrets bristled from every angle. The hull was dark gray, designed to absorb sensor beams rather than deflect them. "She is beautiful," Haiwan said. "She is terrifying," In-Ho corrected. "The aliens will take one look at her and know exactly what kind of species built her." All across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out. The asteroid mining stations had been converted to weapons factories. The research stations around Jupiter were designing new types of missiles. Even the farming colonies were contributing, growing food to feed the massive military buildup. On Earth itself, recruitment centers in every major city were overwhelmed with volunteers. Lines stretched for blocks as humans signed up to fight an enemy they had never seen on worlds they had never heard of. At Marine Training Base Olympia, Sergeant Major Bo-Ra Shin watched the latest group of recruits struggle through obstacle courses, designed to prepare them for alien environments. The men and women came from every part of Earth, but they all shared the same determined expression. "Listen up!" Bo-Ra shouted over the sound of training weapons. "You think you know what war is, because you watched movies or played games. You do not know anything!" The recruits stopped what they were doing and gathered around her. They were breathing hard from the exercise, but their eyes were focused and alert. "The enemy we are going to fight has destroyed 17 entire star systems," Bo-Ra continued. "They have killed billions of innocent people. They think they are unstoppable because they have better ships and stronger shields." She paused, looking at each face in turn. "They have never fought humans before. They do not understand what it means to fight someone who will die before giving up. They do not know what humans do when we get angry." A recruit raised his hand. "Sergeant Major, what makes us different from other species?" Bo-Ra smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Other species fight until it stops being profitable. Other species surrender when the odds get bad. Other species try to minimize casualties and preserve their pretty ships." She activated a holographic display showing footage from human military history, ancient battles, medieval sieges, modern warfare. All of it showed the same thing: humans who kept fighting even when logic said they should give up. Humans fight until the enemy is completely destroyed, she said. We invented the phrase acceptable losses because we are willing to sacrifice everything to win. We will crash our ships into enemy vessels. We will fight with broken weapons and improvised bombs. We will turn every piece of space debris into a weapon if we have to. The recruits were silent, absorbing what she was telling them. The aliens think war is a gentleman's game with rules and honor, Bo-Ra continued. We are going to teach them that war is about making the other guy die for his cause while you live for yours. At the Terran Fleet Academy on Mars, Director Wu Jin, Cho was conducting advanced tactical training for new ship commanders. The simulation rooms were filled with young officers learning to fight in ways that would shock their galactic allies. Captain Ha-Nul Kim, Director Cho called out. Your destroyer squadron is outnumbered 3-1. Standard galactic doctrine says to retreat and call for reinforcements. What do you do? Ha-Nul studied the tactical display for a moment. I order my ships to close to ramming distance and detonate their reactor cores inside the enemy formation. Casualties? 100% on our side. Estimated 80% on theirs. Acceptable trade? Yes, sir. We eliminate a superior enemy force and buy time for the main fleet to reposition. Director Cho nodded approvingly. Correct. Remember, we are not fighting for glory or honor. We are fighting for survival. Every Kronak ship we destroy is a threat that can never attack human worlds. The other officers in the room were taking notes furiously. These were tactics that no other species had ever considered necessary. The idea of deliberately sacrificing ships and crews was alien to galactic military thinking. The enemy expects us to value our own lives above victory, Director Cho explained. This gives us a tremendous advantage. They will hesitate to take losses that we will accept without question. Meanwhile, at the Research and Development Center on Titan, Dr. So-Young Park was working on projects that would have horrified the Galactic Council. Her laboratories were developing weapons designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to break enemy morale. Show me the psychological warfare packages, she told her assistant. The holographic display filled with data about Kronak mental processes. Human scientists had been studying alien psychology for decades, learning how different species thought and reacted. The Kronak are hive-minded, the assistant explained. They think in terms of absolute certainty and perfect order. They cannot handle chaos or unpredictability. Perfect, Dr. Park said. What happens if we introduce random elements into their tactical environment? Their command structure should start to break down. They have no experience with adapting to unexpected situations. Dr. Park activated another display showing weapon designs. These were not the clean energy beams preferred by galactic militaries. These were dirty, unpredictable weapons that would create maximum confusion and terror. Nuclear mines with random detonation timers, she read from the list. Kinetic projectiles that split into multiple warheads. Cyber warfare viruses designed to make their computers lie to them. Are these weapons ethical? The assistant asked nervously. Dr. Park looked at her with cold eyes. The Kronak have destroyed 17 worlds and killed billions of innocent people. Ethics are for peacetime. This is war. Back on Earth, Admiral Kim received daily reports about the mobilization effort. The numbers were staggering. In just 1 month, human industrial capacity had increased by 400%. Every factory that could be converted to military production had been converted. Every available worker had been assigned to war-related tasks. How many humans are now involved in the war effort? He asked Captain Yunbi Park. She consulted her tablet. Directly involved, about 800 million, including support personnel and logistics, over 2 billion. Out of a total population of 12 billion? Yes, sir. Almost 20% of our entire species is now focused on this war. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. The aliens wanted help from the Deathworlders. They are getting the full attention of our entire civilization. Captain Park brought up a display showing ship production schedules. At current construction rates, we will have over 5,000 combat vessels ready for deployment within 6 months. Quality. Each ship is designed specifically for fighting the Kronak. Heavy armor, multiple redundant systems, weapons optimized for penetrating their shields. Admiral Kim studied the ship designs. They were brutal, functional machines of war. No alien species would mistake them for anything other than instruments of destruction. The Council representatives have been asking about our battle plans, Captain Park said. What have you told them? That we will handle the military situation according to human doctrine. Admiral Kim smiled. Good. Let them discover our methods when we use them against the Kronak. I suspect they will be educational. Outside the windows of his office, the ID lights of 1,000 construction projects lit up the night sky. The human war machine was fully awake now, and it was hungry for battle. Soon, the Kronak Empire would discover what it meant to fight a species that had been born in violence and shaped by 10,000 years of constant warfare. The Deathworlders were ready for war. The Kronak advance fleet moved through space like a steel tide. 50 massive warships in perfect formation, their black hulls bristling with energy weapons. They had destroyed everything in their path for 6 months. Today would be no different. Fleet. Commander Zekvar reviewed the tactical display from his flagship's bridge. According to his intelligence reports, only a single human station defended this system. The humans had 1 small orbital platform and perhaps a dozen ships. It would be over in minutes. Begin the attack, he ordered. The Kronak ships accelerated toward Kepler Station, their weapons charging for the killing blow. But as they approached, something unexpected appeared on their sensors. Sir, reported the tactical officer, I am detecting multiple human vessels moving to intercept. How many? 12 ships, as expected. But, sir, they are approaching at maximum speed directly toward our formation. Zekvar frowned. Standard galactic warfare involved long-range energy exchanges between opposing fleets. Ships stayed at safe distances and traded shots until one side's shields failed. But these human ships were closing the distance rapidly. They must be trying to ram us, the tactical officer said. Shall we destroy them before they reach us? Of course, Zekvar replied. Fire when they enter range. The Kronak energy beams lanced out through space, striking the lead human ships. But instead of the expected explosions, the beams seemed to be absorbed by the human vessel's thick armor plating. No effect, sir, the weapons officer reported, confusion in his voice. Impossible. Increase power. More energy beams struck the approaching human ships. This time, the armor plating began to glow red-hot, but the ships kept coming. On the bridge of the human destroyer Defiance, Captain Min-Ho Lee watched the enemy fire with satisfaction. His ship shuddered under the impacts, but the ablative armor was doing its job. Each energy beam burned away layers of protective plating, but there were many layers. "Distance to enemy formation?" he asked. 8,000 kilometers and closing," replied his navigator. "Weapons range? 6,000 kilometers for main guns, 4,000 for optimal effect." Captain Lee smiled grimly. The Kronak were about to learn the difference between galactic warfare and human warfare. "All ships, this is Lee. Prepare for knife-fighting range. Remember, we are not trying to win pretty. We are trying to make them dead." The human squadron continued its high-speed approach. When they reached 6,000 kilometers, Captain Lee gave the order that changed everything. "Fire everything." The human ships opened up with every weapon they carried, but these were not the energy beams the Kronak expected. These were kinetic projectiles, nuclear missiles, and mass driver rounds fired at tremendous velocity. The first salvo hit the Kronak formation like a hammer blow. Nuclear explosions bloomed against alien shields, overloading them with raw force rather than energy. Kinetic rounds punched through weakened defenses, tearing into ship hulls with devastating effect. "What kind of weapons are those?" Zekvar demanded. "Primitive projectiles," his tactical officer replied, but his voice was shaking. "They should not be able to penetrate our shields." "Then why are 3 of our ships disabled?" Before anyone could answer, the human ships reached point-blank range and opened fire again. This time, the weapons were even more devastating. Plasma charges designed to burn through armor, guided missiles that hunted for weak points in ship hulls, railgun rounds that punched holes completely through enemy vessels. The perfect Kronak. Formation began to come apart as ships struggled to deal with damage they had never experienced before. Their energy weapons were designed for long-range precision shots, not close-quarters combat. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the Devastator is reporting critical damage. They are requesting permission to withdraw." Zekvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. A Kronak heavy cruiser, one of the most powerful ships in their fleet, was being forced to retreat by a much smaller human destroyer. "Granted," he said quietly, but the human ships were not finished. As the damaged Kronak vessel turned to flee, one of the human destroyers broke formation and followed it. On the bridge of the human ship Retribution, Commander Na-Young Kim watched the fleeing enemy vessel with cold calculation. "Sir," her tactical officer said, "the enemy ship is trying to escape." "Not on my watch," Commander Kim replied. "Close to boarding range." "Boarding range, sir." "You heard me. We are going to take that ship." The Retribution accelerated after the damaged Kronak cruiser, ignoring the defensive fire from other enemy ships. When it reached the fleeing vessel, something happened that had never occurred in galactic warfare. The human ship fired grappling charges that locked onto the enemy hull. Then armored boarding pods launched from the Retribution, carrying human Marines directly onto the Kronak vessel. Inside the Kronak ship, the alien crew panicked as human soldiers cut through the hull with plasma torches. The ship's corridors had been designed for energy weapon fights at long range, not close-quarters combat with projectile weapons and explosives. The human Marines moved through the ship systematically, using tactics that no galactic species had ever developed. They used smoke grenades to confuse sensors, explosive charges to breach secured doors, and coordinated team movements to clear each compartment. The Kronak crew had never experienced anything like it. Their personal weapons were designed for ceremonial duels, not brutal corridor fighting. Within an hour, the Marines had fought their way to the bridge. The Kronak captain faced Commander Kim across his command center, his crystalline features showing shock and fear. "You cannot do this," he said in broken galactic standard. "There are rules, protocols." "The only rule in war is winning," Commander Kim replied. "Your ship is now ours." The Kronak captain looked around at his destroyed bridge, then at the human soldiers who had taken his vessel with nothing but personal weapons and determination. "This is not how war is fought," he whispered. "It is how humans fight war, Commander," Kim corrected. "You are about to learn the difference." News of the battle spread through the Kronak fleet faster than their commanders could suppress it. For the first time in their military history, they had lost ships to an inferior enemy. More shocking, one of their vessels had been captured by boarding action. Fleet Commander Zekvar stared at the reports in disbelief. 12 human ships had destroyed or captured 8 Kronak vessels before withdrawing. The humans had accepted damage that should have forced them to retreat, but they had kept fighting until the Kronak formation broke apart. "Send word to High Command," he ordered finally. "The humans do not fight according to standard tactical doctrine." "What should we tell them about human capabilities?" Zekvar was quiet for a long moment, watching the tactical display where human ships were already moving to engage his patrol squadrons. "Tell them the humans fight like they want to die," he said quietly. "Tell them we may have underestimated the Deathworlders." Back at Kepler Station, Captain Lee reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. His squadron had suffered heavy damage, but they had proven that human tactics could work against superior Kronak technology. "Casualties?" he asked. 40% losses, his executive officer replied. "But we destroyed 8 enemy ships and captured 1 intact." "Acceptable trade," Captain Lee said. "Send word to Fleet Command. Tell them the Kronak can be beaten, but they will need to learn to fight our kind of war." Throughout human space, the news of the victory spread rapidly. The first engagement had shown that the mighty Kronak Empire could be defeated. More importantly, it had shown that human military doctrine could overcome superior alien technology. The psychological impact on both sides was enormous. The Kronak, who had never lost a battle, suddenly faced an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. The humans, meanwhile, had tasted blood and liked what they found. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when Deathworlders stopped holding back and started fighting the way they had been born to fight. Total war was coming to the stars. The Andromedus Nexus was the heart of Kronak logistics. Massive supply stations orbited a dead star, connected by streams of cargo ships carrying resources from conquered worlds. It was the most heavily defended position in the Kronak Empire, protected by over 200 warships and countless automated defense platforms. Admiral J. Ho Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the sensor displays that showed the target system. Around his flagship, the largest human fleet ever assembled waited for his orders. 300 ships, from massive battleships to small fast attack craft, all designed for one purpose: to break the Kronak war machine. Operation Prometheus begins. In 10 minutes, he announced to the fleet. Captain Yunbi Park checked her tactical displays one final time. "Sir, intelligence confirms the enemy has twice our numbers and superior firepower." "Good," Admiral Kim replied. "If this was going to be easy, they would not need humans to do it." The human fleet had been positioned just outside the system for 3 days, hidden behind a gas giant's electromagnetic storms. Now they prepared to emerge directly into the heart of enemy space, where no sane military commander would dare to attack. "All ships report ready," Captain Park announced. "Execute," Admiral Kim ordered. The human fleet materialized out of hyperspace in a coordinated attack that violated every principle of galactic warfare. Instead of appearing at the system's edge and advancing slowly, they jumped directly into the middle of the Kronak defensive formation. The enemy had seconds to react before the human ships opened fire with everything they carried. The first salvo was devastating. Nuclear missiles detonated against Kronak shields, overloading them with brute force. Kinetic rounds punched through weakened defenses at relativistic speeds. Plasma charges burned through armor plating like acid through paper. But the real shock was not the weapons, it was the tactics. Instead of maintaining formation and trading long-range shots, the human ships scattered in all directions, forcing the Kronak defenders to split their fire. Small attack craft dove between the massive enemy battleships, launching missiles at point-blank range before accelerating away at speeds that stressed their hulls to the breaking point. On the bridge of the Kronak command ship, Supreme Fleet, Admiral Lokhtar watched his perfect defensive formation disintegrate into chaos. "How did they get past our sensor networks?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied. "They appeared simultaneously at 17 different locations within our formation." "Impossible. No fleet can coordinate that precisely." But the humans were doing exactly that. Their ships moved with a coordination that seemed telepathic, supporting each other in ways that made no logical sense. When one ship's shields failed, another would deliberately move to cover it, accepting damage that should have been avoided. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the Dominator is reporting critical damage. They are requesting permission to withdraw." Before Admiral Lokhtar could respond, something happened that had never occurred in Kronak military history. 3 human destroyers broke off from the main battle and pursued the damaged battleship. "What are they doing?" Admiral Lokhtar asked. His question was answered when the human ships opened fire on the retreating vessel with everything they had. Instead of allowing a wounded enemy to escape, they were deliberately hunting it down for destruction. "They are executing a damaged ship," the tactical officer said in shock. That is barbaric." The Dominator exploded under concentrated human fire, taking its crew of 15,000 with it. The psychological impact on the Kronak fleet was immediate and devastating. Captain Yunbi Park coordinated the human attack from her position on the Indomitable. Her tactical screen showed a 3-dimensional battle that would have been impossible for any other species to manage. "Strike Squadron Alpha. Focus fire on their command ship," she ordered. "Beta Squadron, take out those cargo vessels. Charlie Squadron, I want you to ram that space station." "Confirm ram order?" came the reply from Charlie Squadron leader. "Confirmed. Full ramming speed. Make it count." 6 human heavy cruisers accelerated toward the largest Kronak supply station, their crews already evacuated to escape pods. The ships struck the station at tremendous velocity, their nuclear reactors set to overload on impact. The explosion was visible throughout the system. The station, which had been the size of a small moon, was vaporized along with its cargo of weapons and supplies meant for 10 Kronak battle fleets. The human attack continued for 6 hours, during which every rule of galactic warfare was broken, repeatedly. Human ships rammed enemy vessels when their weapons were exhausted. Boarding parties captured strategic positions and held them against overwhelming odds. Even damaged human ships continued fighting until their reactors went critical. Marine. General Hansol Kim led the assault on the main Kronak fortress station. His troops used tactics that the aliens had never encountered before. Explosive breaching charges to create their own entrances, smoke grenades to confuse sensors, and coordinated team movements that cleared fortified positions with brutal efficiency. How? Do we get through their blast doors? Asked Major Jae-Sung Lee. We do not go through them, General Kim replied. We go around them. The Marines used shaped charges to blow holes directly through the station's hull, bypassing the defended corridors entirely. They fought their way through maintenance shafts, cargo bays, and life support systems, appearing in critical areas where the Kronak had never expected enemies to reach. The fortress that had been designed to withstand a siege by conventional forces fell in 6 hours to troops who refused to fight conventionally. As news of the human victory spread through both fleets, the psychological impact became clear. The Kronak, who had conquered 17 star systems without a single defeat, were suddenly facing an enemy that seemed to ignore the laws of physics and military science. Sir, the Kronak communications officer reported to Admiral Lokhtar, we are receiving surrender requests from 12 of our own ships. Surrender requests? They are saying they cannot fight enemies who act like this. They are asking permission to withdraw from battle. Admiral Lokhtar looked at his tactical display, which showed his carefully organized fleet reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships, fighting desperately against human forces that seemed to be everywhere at once. For the first time in Kronak history, he gave an order that had never been necessary before. All ships withdraw from the system. Repeat, general withdrawal. The surviving Kronak ships fled toward the edge of the system, leaving behind their supply bases, their cargo vessels, and their reputation for invincibility. Admiral Kim watched the enemy retreat from the bridge of his flagship. Around him, his staff was already calculating the strategic impact of their victory. Damage report? He asked. 30% losses, Captain Park replied. But we have captured or destroyed the primary Kronak supply hub for this sector. Effect. On their operations? They will not be able to support major fleet actions in this region for at least 6 months. Admiral Kim nodded with satisfaction. The Kronak Empire had learned its first lesson about fighting humans. Superior technology and numbers meant nothing against an enemy willing to pay any price for victory. Send word to the Galactic Council, he ordered. Tell them the tide has turned. The Kronak are no longer unstoppable. Throughout liberated space, the news of the human victory spread like wildfire. Species that had cowered in fear for months suddenly dared to hope. The mighty Kronak Empire, which had seemed like an unstoppable force of nature, had been defeated by the barbaric Deathworlders. But in the depths of Kronak space, emergency councils were meeting. The humans had revealed capabilities that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Worse, they had shown a willingness to sacrifice themselves that made them almost impossible to defeat through conventional means. The Kronak Empire was learning what it meant to fight a species that had been shaped by 10,000 years of constant warfare. They were discovering that when humans went to war, they did not fight to win battles. They fought to destroy their enemies completely. The galaxy was about to witness total war among the stars, and the humans were just getting started. The intelligence briefing room on Luna Base was filled with holographic displays showing the deep structure of Kronak space. Admiral Kim studied the tactical data with cold concentration, while his senior staff waited for orders that would send them into the heart of enemy territory. Show me the target again, he said. Captain Park activated the main display. A three-dimensional map appeared, showing a heavily fortified star system, 15 jumps inside Kronak space. Kronak Prime, their homeworld. Population, 40 billion. Orbital infrastructure includes 17 major shipyards, the Imperial War College, and the Central Command Complex. Defenses? 300 capital ships in permanent orbit. Automated defense platforms numbering in the thousands. Planetary shields that can withstand direct attack by battle fleets. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. And our mission is to strike directly at their most protected target, using a single stealth carrier and a handful of special operations teams. Sir, General Mi-Ray Cho spoke up from her position at the conference table. My people are ready, but the odds of success are challenging. The odds of success are irrelevant, Admiral Kim replied. The psychological impact is what matters. The Kronak have never been attacked on their homeworld. They think their core systems are completely safe. He activated another display showing intelligence reports from captured Kronak personnel. Their entire military philosophy is based on expansion and conquest. They have no experience with defensive warfare in their own territory. Captain Tae-Young Park, commander of the stealth carrier Shadowhunter, reviewed the mission parameters. Sir, even if we reach the target system undetected, extraction will be nearly impossible. This is essentially a one-way mission. Are your people prepared for that? They volunteered specifically because it is a one-way mission, Captain Park replied. They want to hurt the enemy where it will do the most damage. The plan was audacious even by human standards. A single stealth ship would penetrate deep into Kronak space using captured enemy transponders and sensor ghosts. Once in orbit around Kronak Prime, special operations teams would assault the most important targets simultaneously, creating maximum chaos and destruction. Major Ji-Hoon Lee commanded the strike teams. His soldiers were volunteers from every branch of human military service, trained specifically for this mission. They knew they would not be coming home. Target priorities? Major Lee asked. Admiral Kim brought up a list on the main display. Primary target, the Imperial War College. Secondary targets, orbital shipyards 7, 12, and 15. Tertiary target, the Central Command Complex. Rules of engagement? There are no rules, Admiral Kim said quietly. This is total war. You are authorized to use any means necessary to achieve maximum damage and psychological impact. The briefing ended with handshakes and salutes that carried the weight of final farewells. Everyone in the room knew that the strike teams were being sent to die, but they also knew that their deaths would serve a purpose that might save billions of lives. 3 days later, the Shadowhunter emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kronak Prime system. Captain Park immediately activated every stealth system his ship possessed, turning the vessel into a ghost that drifted through space virtually undetectable. Passive sensors only, he ordered. I want complete emission silence until we reach the target. The ship moved toward the heavily defended homeworld using captured Kronak navigation data. Enemy ships passed within a few thousand kilometers, their sensors sweeping space for threats they could not imagine. Distance to orbital insertion? Captain Park asked. 6 hours at current velocity, replied his navigator. Sir, I am detecting massive fleet movements around the planet. It looks like they are preparing for something. Captain Park studied the sensor data. Hundreds of Kronak ships were moving into defensive formations around their homeworld. They know we are coming. Impossible, sir. Our stealth systems are operating perfectly. They do not know we are coming specifically, Captain Park corrected. But they know humans are capable of deep strikes now. They are trying to protect everything. Major Lee prepared his teams for deployment. Each soldier wore powered armor designed for zero-gravity combat and carried enough explosives to level a city block. They were not equipped for survival. They were equipped for maximum destruction. "Remember," Major Lee told his troops, "the Kronak have never experienced warfare on their homeworld. They have no idea how to respond to what we are about to do. Use that confusion to get as close to your targets as possible before they realize what is happening." The Shadow Hunter reached orbital insertion point, just as Kronak Prime's sun was setting behind the planet's curve. The world below was a mixture of crystal cities and metal complexes, home to the species that had terrorized the galaxy for months. "Launch. All pods," Captain Park ordered. 60 insertion pods shot out from the stealth carrier, each one carrying a small team of human soldiers toward specific targets on the planet's surface and in orbit. The pods were designed to look like space debris on sensors, invisible until they were too close to stop. Commander Ye-Jin Cho led the assault on the Imperial War College, the prestigious institution where Kronak officers learned the art of conquest. Her team's pod crashed through the crystal dome that covered the main campus, and her soldiers emerged firing. The Kronak cadets had never seen combat outside of simulation exercises. They panicked as human soldiers moved through their halls with weapons that filled the air with smoke and fire. The elegant crystal architecture, designed for ceremony and beauty, shattered under explosive charges and kinetic rounds. "Where is the main computer core?" Commander Cho demanded of a captured cadet. The young Kronak pointed toward the central spire with a trembling claw. Commander Cho's team fought their way through defensive positions that had never been designed for actual warfare, reaching the heart of the college within an hour. The computer core contained the complete tactical database of the Kronak military: battle plans, ship designs, personnel records, and strategic assessments. Commander Cho uploaded a human virus into the system, then set demolition charges throughout the facility. When the War College exploded, the blast was visible from orbit. 3,000 years of Kronak military tradition vanished in a pillar of fire that reached toward the stars. At the orbital shipyards, other teams were conducting similar attacks. Sergeant Dae-Yeon Kim led her demolition specialists into the massive construction bays where new Kronak battleships were being built. The shipyard workers fled in panic as human soldiers appeared in areas that should have been completely secure. "Set the charges on the reactor cores," Sergeant Kim ordered. "I want these ships to burn, not just break." Her team moved through the shipyard with professional efficiency, placing explosive devices on critical systems throughout the facility. The Kronak security forces tried to respond, but they had no experience with the kind of close-quarters combat that humans had perfected over centuries. When the charges detonated, they created a chain reaction that destroyed not just the ships under construction, but the entire shipyard complex. The explosion was so massive that debris reached escape velocity, creating a meteor shower that fell on Kronak Prime's major cities. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. For the first time in their history, the Kronak people could look up at their sky and see their own military installations burning. The species that had thought themselves invincible was learning what it felt like to be vulnerable. Emergency broadcasts filled Kronak communication networks as planetary defense forces struggled to respond to attacks they had never imagined possible. Human soldiers were fighting on the homeworld itself, destroying targets that had been considered absolutely secure. Supreme Military Commander Velkoth watched the reports from his underground bunker with growing horror. The humans had penetrated to the very heart of the Kronak Empire and were systematically destroying everything that represented military power. "How did they get past our defenses?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his aide replied. "They appear to have used some kind of infiltration technology that our sensors cannot detect." How many humans are on the planet? Intelligence estimates no more than a few hundred. Velkoth stared at the tactical displays showing burning installations across his homeworld. A few hundred humans are destroying our most important military facilities. They appear to be using tactics we have never encountered: suicide attacks, explosive demolitions, coordinated strikes on symbolic targets. On the surface, Major Lee's teams continued their assault for 18 hours before Kronak forces finally began to organize an effective response. By then, the damage was complete. The War College was gone. 3 major shipyards were destroyed. Dozens of smaller facilities lay in ruins. Most importantly, the myth of Kronak invincibility was shattered. If humans could strike at the homeworld itself, nowhere in the Empire was truly safe. The surviving human soldiers made their final stands in the ruins of their targets, fighting until their ammunition was exhausted and their armor failed. They died as they had lived, on their own terms, taking as many enemies with them as possible. The last transmission from Major Lee came 18 hours after the initial attack. Mission accomplished. Targets destroyed. Long live humanity. The emergency session of the Kronak High Command took place in a bunker deep beneath their homeworld surface. The crystal walls that had once displayed images of conquered galaxies now showed burning shipyards and ruined military installations. Supreme War Leader Grekmore looked at his assembled commanders with eyes that had learned the meaning of desperation. "The humans have forced our hand," he announced to the gathered officers. "We mobilize everything, every ship, every weapon, every warrior. We will crush human space completely before they can strike us again." The largest military force in galactic history began to assemble in the outer systems of the Kronak Empire. 5,000 battleships, 20,000 cruisers, and countless support vessels. The armada stretched across light years of space, a steel tide that would wash over human worlds and erase them from existence. Fleet Marshal Kex Tar commanded the invasion force from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that carried enough firepower to crack planets. Around him, his staff planned the complete destruction of human civilization. "Intelligence reports?" he asked. "The humans have approximately 800 major warships," his tactical officer replied. "Their industrial capacity cannot match our production. We outnumber them 10 to 1 in ships, 50 to 1 in total tonnage. Then why are we assembling the entire fleet to destroy them?" The tactical officer was quiet for a moment. "Because they fight like nothing we have ever encountered, sir. Our previous engagement suggests they will not surrender even when facing impossible odds." Marshal Kex Tar nodded grimly. "Then we will give them impossible odds and see if their famous courage can withstand complete annihilation." In human space, Admiral Kim received the intelligence reports with cold satisfaction. The Kronak were doing exactly what he had hoped they would do, concentrating their entire military force for one massive attack. "Protocol Omega is authorized," he announced to his assembled fleet commanders. The activation of Protocol Omega sent shockwaves through human military command. It was the most extreme military doctrine in human history, designed for conflicts where the survival of the species was at stake. Every available vessel was pressed into military service. Civilian cargo ships were converted into missile platforms. Mining vessels became improvised warships. Even passenger liners were armed with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. Captain Sang-Ho Lee received his orders aboard the converted freighter Determination. His ship had been a peaceful cargo vessel just days before. Now it carried a crew of volunteers and enough nuclear missiles to destroy a battle fleet. "Sir," his executive officer asked, "what are our rules of engagement?" "There are no rules," Captain Lee replied. We ram enemy ships when our missiles are exhausted. We detonate our reactor core if ramming is not possible. We fight until every human ship is destroyed or every Kronak ship is fleeing. Similar scenes played out throughout human space. Grandmother Hai Jin, a retired merchant captain, took command of a converted passenger liner crewed by civilian volunteers. Her ship's passengers had been replaced with torpedo tubes and armor plating. "Most of us will not survive this battle," she told her crew over the intercom. "But our children and grandchildren will survive because of what we do here today." The human fleet that assembled to meet the Kronak invasion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Professional warships fought alongside converted civilian vessels. Ancient retired battleships were brought out of mothballs and crewed by veterans who had thought their fighting days were over. Commander Young Mi Park led a squadron of destroyers that had been designed specifically for this moment. Her ships carried no defensive weapons, no repair systems, no provisions for retreat. They were built for one purpose: to destroy as many enemy vessels as possible before being destroyed themselves. "Remember," she told her captains, "we are not trying to survive this battle. We are trying to make the enemy pay such a terrible price for victory that they will never want to fight humans again." The two fleets met in the Titan Nebula, a region of space filled with gas clouds and electromagnetic storms that would limit sensor range and communications. Admiral Kim had chosen the battlefield carefully. In close-quarters combat among the nebula's hazards, human tactical advantages would be maximized. The battle began when the first Kronak ships entered the nebula and immediately found themselves blind and confused. The gas clouds interfered with their long-range sensors, while electromagnetic storms disrupted their perfect fleet coordination. Human ships, operating in small independent groups, emerged from the nebula clouds like wolves, attacking a herd. They fired their weapons at point-blank range, then vanished back into the swirling gas before the Kronak could respond effectively. The determination appeared directly beneath a Kronak battleship and fired every missile it carried into the enemy's unprotected underside. Captain Lee's converted freighter was destroyed by return fire, but not before its attack crippled one of the most powerful ships in the Kronak fleet. Throughout the nebula, similar attacks were taking place. Human ships materialized out of the gas clouds, struck with devastating effect, and disappeared again. The Kronak found themselves fighting an enemy they could barely see against a backdrop that turned every sensor reading into confusion. "Sir," Marshal Kextar's tactical officer reported, "we are taking heavy losses. The humans are using the nebula to mask their approach vectors." "Then we burn out the nebula," Marshal Kextar ordered. "Concentrate fire on the gas clouds themselves, the AE." Kronak fleet opened fire with every weapon they possessed, trying to clear the nebula with brute force. But the gas clouds were hundreds of billions of kilometers across. Their energy beams only created brief, clear zones that quickly filled with gas again. Meanwhile, human ships continued their attacks. The converted liner commanded by Grandmother Hai Jin emerged from a particularly dense cloud and rammed a Kronak cruiser at full speed. The explosion vaporized both ships, but the psychological impact on nearby Kronak crews was devastating. "They are deliberately destroying themselves," a Kronak captain reported to Marshal Kextar. "They are using their own ships as weapons." Impossible. No rational species would employ such tactics. "Sir, we have lost over 200 ships in the past hour. The humans are accepting casualty rates that should have broken their formations completely." Marshal Kextar studied his tactical displays with growing horror. His massive fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that fought with no regard for their own survival. Worse, the human attacks were becoming more coordinated as the battle progressed. Commander Park's destroyer squadron executed a perfect example of human tactical thinking. Her ships waited until a Kronak formation entered a particularly dense gas cloud, then emerged from 3 different directions simultaneously. "Fire everything!" she ordered. The destroyers launched every torpedo they carried, creating a web of destruction that no enemy ship could escape. 3 Kronak battleships died in the coordinated attack, but Commander Park's ships were caught in the explosion of their own weapons. Her final transmission was heard throughout the human fleet. "Target destroyed. Worth it." As the battle raged, for hours, the psychological impact began to tell on the Kronak forces. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to welcome death as much as victory. Human crews sang battle songs as their ships exploded. They laughed as they died. "Sir," the Kronak communications officer reported to Marshal Kextar, "we are receiving surrender requests from our own ships." "What?" 17 of our captains are requesting permission to withdraw from battle. They say they cannot fight enemies who act like this. For the first time in Kronak military history, their perfect discipline was beginning to crack. The species that had conquered through superior technology and overwhelming force was learning what happened when they faced opponents who simply refused to be defeated. Admiral Kim watched the battle from the bridge of the Indomitable, his flagship hidden deep within the nebula's heart. Around him, his staff coordinated attacks by ships that existed only as sensor ghosts and radio signals. "Casualty reports?" he asked. 70% losses, Captain Park replied. "But we have destroyed over 400 enemy ships." Kronak. "Morale? Breaking? Their formations are losing cohesion. Some ships are beginning to retreat without orders." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. This was what total war looked like when humans fought it. Not a contest between armies, but a test of will between entire species. In the depths of the nebula, the battle reached its climax when the surviving human ships began the final phase of Protocol Omega. Every damaged vessel set course for the largest Kronak ships and prepared to ram them at maximum velocity. The Indomitable itself led the charge, Admiral Kim standing on his bridge as his flagship accelerated toward Marshal Kextar's command vessel. "Sir," Captain Park said quietly, "it has been an honor." "The honor is mine," Admiral Kim replied. "Now let us show them how humans die." But before the final collision could occur, something unprecedented happened. Marshal Kextar's ship transmitted a message that echoed through both fleets. "We yield. We surrender to the Deathworld warriors." The Kronak Empire, which had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of expansion, was surrendering to an enemy they outnumbered 10-1. The surrender came not through formal negotiation, but through the complete collapse of Kronak military will. Fleet Marshal Kextar's transmission echoed across the battlefield. "We yield to the Deathworld warriors. Your species fights like the universe itself is at stake." Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, looking at the tactical display that showed thousands of Kronak ships powering down their weapons. Around him, the remnants of the human fleet drifted among the gas clouds of the Titan Nebula, many ships held together by emergency force fields and the determination of their crews. "Confirm the surrender," he ordered Captain Park. "All Kronak. Vessels are standing down," she replied. "They are requesting instructions for prisoner transfer and ship impoundment." Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment. In the space of 8 months, humanity had fought the largest war in galactic history. They had faced an enemy with superior numbers and technology, and they had won through sheer determination and tactical innovation. "Tell Marshal Kextar that we accept his surrender," Admiral Kim said finally. "All Kronak forces will return to their home systems and remain there until further notice. Any ship that leaves Kronak space will be destroyed without warning." The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships, many of them barely functional, began the long journey home, while Kronak vessels limped back to their empire in defeat. News of the surrender spread throughout the galaxy faster than hyperspace communication could carry it. Species that had cowered in fear for months suddenly dared to hope. The Kronak Empire, which had seemed like an unstoppable force of nature, had been defeated by the barbaric Deathworlders. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened on Luna to formally acknowledge what had happened. The council chamber, which had once echoed with desperate pleas for help, now hummed with nervous conversation about humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Ambassador Tae Min, who had first brought the plea for aid, now faced a very different situation. The species he had once called violent savages had become the galaxy's saviors, but they had also become its most powerful military force. The Council recognizes the contribution of humanity to galactic security, the first speaker announced. "We formally thank the human species for their intervention against the Kronak threat." Admiral Kim, now promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander, sat at the council table with the same expression he had worn throughout the war: calm, professional, and completely uncompromising. "The Council's thanks are accepted," he replied. "But we need to discuss the future." The future? The galaxy has learned that civilized warfare is a luxury that only works when everyone agrees to be civilized, Admiral Kim explained. The Kronak proved that there are threats that cannot be stopped by polite energy beam exchanges and formal surrender protocols. He activated a holographic display showing the current military situation. Human fleets were positioned throughout former Kronak space, ensuring that the defeated empire remained contained. "Humanity is prepared to take responsibility for galactic security," Admiral Kim continued, "but this will require changes to how the galaxy operates." The council members shifted nervously in their seats. They had asked for humanity's help, but they had not expected the Deathworlders to become the dominant military power in the galaxy. "What kind of changes?" the first speaker asked carefully. "The age of civilized warfare is over," Admiral Kim said bluntly. "Future conflicts will be prevented through strength, not appeasement. Species that threaten others will face the full force of human military doctrine." Captain Yunbi Park, now Admiral Park, sat beside him with files containing humanity's proposals for a new galactic order. The documents outlined a structure that would ensure peace through the threat of overwhelming force. "The Terran Protectorate will maintain fleets in all major systems," Admiral Park explained. "Any species that attempts to follow the Kronak model will be stopped immediately and completely." "And who decides what constitutes a threat?" asked the representative from Altair Prime. "We do," Admiral Kim replied without hesitation. "Humanity has proven that we can win wars that others cannot even fight. That gives us the right to decide how the galaxy will be protected." The council chamber fell silent. The implications were clear. Humanity was not asking for permission to become the galaxy's protector. They were informing the council that this was how things would be. "The alternative," Admiral Kim continued, "is to return to the previous system where civilized species hope that threats like the Kronak never emerge. We have seen how well that works. Over the following months, the Terran Protectorate became reality. Human bases were established in key systems throughout the galaxy. Human officers began training alien crews in military tactics that emphasized winning over honor. General Mireille Cho oversaw the integration of human tactical doctrine into Allied fleets. The elegant ships preferred by galactic species were retrofitted with human weapons and armor. The result was less beautiful, but infinitely more effective. Your crews need to understand, she told a group of alien ship commanders, that combat is not a dance or a ritual. It is a problem to be solved, and the solution is always the same. Make the enemy die for their cause while you live for yours. The former Kronak Empire became a testing ground for human peacekeeping methods. Kronak worlds were occupied by human forces who ensured that the aggressive species could never again threaten their neighbors. Commander Yejin Cho, one of the few survivors of the Deep Strike mission, established a military academy on the former Kronak homeworld. There, young beings from across the galaxy learned human military doctrine and the philosophy behind it. War is not about honor or glory, she taught her students. War is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Everything else is secondary. The psychological impact of humanity's victory continued to reshape galactic society. Species that had once prided themselves on their pacifist nature began to study human military history. The concept of total war entered galactic vocabulary as a cautionary tale about what happened when civilized restraint proved insufficient. Captain Tae-Young Park, who had commanded the stealth mission to Kronak Prime, now oversaw human intelligence operations throughout the galaxy. His ships monitored potential threats and ensured that no new empire could arise to challenge galactic peace. The Kronak taught us something important, he reported to Admiral Kim. Civilized species can be destroyed by uncivilized enemies, but uncivilized enemies can be destroyed by opponents who are willing to be even more uncivilized. 5 years after the war's end, the galaxy had settled into a new pattern. Trade flowed freely between systems protected by human military bases. Scientific cooperation flourished under the umbrella of human security guarantees. Art and culture experienced a renaissance as species no longer feared for their survival, but always in the background was the knowledge that humanity's peace was enforced by their willingness to wage total war against any threat that emerged. Admiral Kim, now in his 70s, stood on the observation deck of Luna Base and looked out at Earth. The blue world that had given birth to humanity was still there, still beautiful, still dangerous, but now it was also the center of a galactic empire built on the principle that some things were worth fighting for. "Any regrets?" Admiral Park asked, joining him at the window. "Only one," Admiral Kim replied. "I regret that it took a galactic crisis for the other species to understand what humans have always known, which is that peace is not the absence of war," he said quietly. "Peace is what you have when everyone knows that war would be too costly to contemplate." In the distance, human children played in the parks of Luna City, while alien children from across the galaxy studied in human schools. They were growing up in a universe where species like the Kronak could not threaten the innocent, because humanity stood guard against the darkness. The final monument to the war was built on the site where the Battle of Titan Nebula had taken place. It was a simple structure, a black wall listing the names of every human who had died in the conflict. Below the names was a single inscription: "They died so that others might live in peace." But the real monument was the galaxy itself. Systems that had been consumed by the Kronak were slowly being rebuilt. Species that had faced extinction were growing strong again. Children were being born on worlds that had been nothing but rubble just years before. The Kronak themselves had become a different people under human occupation. Their aggressive culture was being slowly reformed, guided by human administrators, who understood that lasting peace required more than military victory. Young Kronak learned about cooperation instead of conquest, about building instead of destroying. "Will they ever be allowed to govern themselves again?" asked Ambassador Tae-min during one of his regular meetings with Admiral Kim. "When they prove they can be trusted not to threaten their neighbors," Admiral Kim replied. "That may take generations, but we have time." The galaxy had learned that humans thought in terms of centuries, not years. Their plans for galactic security were designed to last for the long term, ensuring that threats like the Kronak could never emerge again.